too masterful, too much inclined to think that all things should be made to go as he would have them. Young as he was, he had been altogether his own master since he was of age, and not only his own master, but the master also of all with whom he was brought into contact from day to day. In his life he conversed but seldom with any except those who were dependent on him, nor had he done so for the last 3 years. At an age at which young men at home are still subject to pastors and masters, he had sprung at once into patriarchal power, and, being a man determined to thrive, had become laborious and thoughtful beyond his years. Harry Heathcote had been left an orphan, with a small fortune in money, when he was 14. For 2 years after that he had consented to remain quietly at school, but at 16 he declared his purpose of emigrating. Boys, less than himself in stature, got above him at school, and he had not liked it. For a 12-month he was opposed by his guardian, but at the end of the year he was fitted forth for the colony. The guardian was not sorry to be quit of him, but prophesied that he would be home again before a year was over. The lad had not returned, and it was now a settled conviction among all who knew him that he would make or mar his fortune in the new land that he had chosen. He was a tall, well-made young fellow, with fair hair and a good-humoured smile, but ever carrying in his countenance marks of what his enemies called pig-headedness, his acquaintances obstinacy, and those who loved him firmness. His acquaintances were perhaps right, for he certainly was obstinate. He would take no man's advice. He would submit himself to no man, and, in the conduct of his own business, preferred to trust to his own insight rather than to the experience of others. It would sometimes occur that he had to pay heavily for his obstinacy, but on the other hand, the lessons which he learned thoroughly. And he was kept right in his trade by his own indefatigable industry. That trade was the growth of wool. He was a breeder of sheep on a Queensland sheep run, and his flocks ran far afield over a vast territory of which he was the only lord. His house was near the River Mary, and beyond the river his domain did not extend. But around him, on his own side of the river, he could ride for 10 miles in each direction, without getting off his own pastures. He was master, as far as his mastership went, of 120,000 acres, almost an English county, and it was the pride of his heart to put his foot off his own territory as seldom as possible. He sent his wool annually down to Brisbane, and received his stores, tea and sugar, flour and brandy, boots, clothes, tobacco, etc., once or twice a year from thence. But the traffic did not require his own presence at the city. So self-contained was the working of the establishment that he was never called away by his business, unless he went to see some lot of highly bred sheep which he might feel disposed to buy. And, as for pleasure, it had come to be altogether beyond the purpose of his life to go in quest of that. When the work of the day was over, he would lie at his length upon rugs in the veranda, with a pipe in his mouth, while his wife sat over him reading a play of Shakespeare, or the last novel that had come to them from England. He had married a fair girl, the orphan daughter of a bankrupt squatter whom he had met in Sydney, and had brought her and her sister into the Queensland bush with him. His wife idolized him. His sister-in-law, Kate Daly, loved him dearly, as she had cause to do, for he had proved himself to be a very brother to her. But she feared him also somewhat. The people about the Mary said that she was fairer and sweeter to look at, even than the elder sister. Mrs. Heathcote was the taller of the two, and the larger-featured. She certainly was the higher in intellect, and the fittest to be the mistress of such an establishment as that at Gangoil. When he had washed his hands and face, and had swallowed the very copious but weak allowance of brandy and water which his wife mixed for him, he took the eldest boy on his lap and fondled him. "By George," he said, "old fellow, you shan't be a squatter." "Why not, Harry?"